Well, our first session focused on what organizations are doing in terms of best practices to move work style reform ahead. We are very excited about this next session, which will focus on personal and individual perspectives on how we can make a difference in how we work and how our teams work. We can't leave it all to the organization. So our moderator for this session, we're delighted to have Mariko Kitao, President of Diversity Office Kitao, and Executive Consultant to the Hyogo Shigoto to Seikatsu Work and Life Center. And I'll leave it to you to lead this panel. Thank you, Mariko.
Good afternoon. Now let's start the session 2. I am a moderator for this session. Thank you very much. There are many former P&G colleagues, and I spent some years, or quite a long years, in P&G, so it's a kind of reunion for me. In the first, the keynote lectures and also the session 1, somebody mentioned resistance and how are we going to stand against this resistance that was mentioned. I had a teleconference the other day to discuss as a preparation for this, and there are other changes that everybody was involved, and then people shared with that. In the first session we discussed the organizational change, but from now on we will talk about our personal experience through which the organization might be affected positively and also the team were affected positively. And I am working in Hyogo Shigoto to Seikatsu Center. That is the name of the organization I'm working. And we visit a lot of organizations and encourage them to be involved in this kind of activity. But many of them say that it is difficult. We are too small to make a change. This is the typical answer we get. But somebody said that you may say that you cannot, but if you eliminate all the reasons why you cannot do, then eventually you can do things. And while I was working for a company, I was a workaholic and I did not take any rest, and I complained about that. But looking back, it was me that who were not trying to take a rest. And I understood this because of my personal experience. And so changing from I cannot do to I can do, I have to go through the personal experience and have a sense of feeling about that. First of all, I would like all the speakers to share their introductions and also the gist of what they are going to say. We're going to have this session until 4:50, so the last 10 minutes or 20 minutes, depending on how we proceed with, we would like to open the discussion to the audience as well. So please be prepared for that. Now, without further ado, Mr. Yamamoto. Good afternoon, everybody. I am working at Google. I am a brand marketing manager in Japan. And I have many opportunities to be in this kind of session, but don't take me wrong. I am not involved in HR. I'm not directly involved in the transformation of the company. I put the perspective from outside of the company to the company. The women's will, the way of the work have to be changed. I am involved from the marketing and outside of the company perspective. We rack our brains with the companies outside of Google to do some verification study and how are we going to make a change in the company. We try to share the know-how with many companies. We have supported more than 1,100 companies in this aspect. So today, not only about Google, I would like to share what I have been through in that capacity. And the personal experience is also important in this session. So I have 5-year-old and 3-year-old, 2 boys. And my 3-year-old will have a birthday tomorrow. Congratulations, happy birthday, thank you very much. And he likes blueberry jam for breakfast, so I have to clean up his mouth. It took so long. I was almost late for my Shinkansen. 7 years ago, I lost my father, and 3 years ago, I lost my mother. I took care of them remotely, so I faced a lot of difficulties in these aspects. So I want to share that experience as well. I'm Tsukamoto from Caterpillar, Japan. For 3 decades, I was in the IBM in IT, but in 2015, I moved to Caterpillar, the digital industry. Beyond work-life balance, they have the work-life integrations. The 24/7 they are on, and they work and then they live, and then all of these balances are mixed up. Everybody comes to the office at different time of the day, and we're not told to be in the office in certain around time. But now I come to the office at 7:30. The business hour starts from 8, and I'm not supposed to send an email over the weekends. So it is such a difference. But once I am accustomed to this practice, it is very comfortable. Nobody sent an email to me, so I don't have to send an email to anybody. Sometimes I make a mistake and send an email over the weekend, but most of the time I'm doing okay. And I think I might have looked like an alien when I joined Caterpillar from the Caterpillar's point of view. But they were surprised, but they accepted us and they listened to me. And I am doing now, the Caterpillar has a manufacturing industry culture. They are very discreet and careful. And if some proposal is already mentioned, and then they say that it seems to be interesting, let's do it anyway. They are receptive. And then it was the joint venture with Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, so the culture has lots of traditional aspect of Japan. Their way of preparing document is perfect. For example, it's like an open source, so we can prepare something 60% and share the idea. We want to say that in order to improve the productivity now. The characteristics of the company and the location of having the factory physically, this will make the company a big different from the other industries. So this is a bit of experience I can share today with you. Next, Ms. Hirata. From MetLife, I'm Hirata. Now I am in legal office, the chief legal officer, consisting of the attorneys. And I am from Kansai in this district. I was born in Osaka, raised in Nara, and my education was in Kyoto, so I was a really localized person. Only after starting my career, I went to Tokyo, so my Japanese may sound like a Kansai dialect. Today, I look back myself and I am trying to change my organization with 3 steps. One is the awareness, learning. This is the first step. This is about what matters to you and what's most important for you. What is most important for you?
If you go to work and if you spend your daily life, it's difficult to notice what really matters in your life. Especially if you're working for a Japanese company, you are just told what to do, so you don't really think in your daily life. So in the first phase, I want my people to think. So as the second phase, we want to think about what company can provide to the employees. If there is something which matters to each employee, the company wants to provide them. And as the third phase, we want to empower the team members. There are many people who want to divide what they want to do and what they have to do at work. But I think you can change the world even if you are in the office. We are still in the first phase, and we are now trying to begin the second phase. Thank you. Thank you very much. So if you have some comments, please jump in at any time. Hirata-san just mentioned on the first day in your office, you made change. I think there were a lot of resistance, so if you can talk about your experience. This is my third year in MetLife. I used to work for a foreign affiliated financial company, and then I spent 10 years in the US. So when I arrived this company, they thought that I'm somebody from a foreign country. On the first day or the second day in the company, I declared that we are not going to have drinking party after 5 o'clock. Half of the team members were female and the other half was male, and they were stunned, thinking that I'm not going to talk in drinking dinner. So after 5 o'clock, it's up to you, I said. You can either work or spend time outside of the office. But if you want to have an official dinner after 5 o'clock, there may be some people who cannot join because of their family life. So it's not fair to talk about the job after 5 o'clock. So I declare that we are not going to have a dinner party or dinner meeting because fairness matters. So if I'm going to go out for a dinner with one person, I'll have to go to a dinner with everyone to be fair. And that's not possible, and that's why I declare that we are not going to have a dinner after 5 o'clock with anybody. Sometimes people think that male and female have to be treated equally, but that's not really true because each one of us has different needs and different background. So the fairness is very important rather than equality. Do you have any comments on this aspect? Yes. I used to work for advertising company of Nikkei, and I worked very hard, and I went to drinking dinner after work very often. My team, each one of the team members have different background and work style, so we want to respect those differences and treat them fairly. And we also have to mindful about the diversity or the differences of each member. More specifically, my manager is now raising his children, and in his calendar he put was like PTA or the medical checkup of his daughter. So his private matters are also in the calendar. But by sharing that calendar, we can understand what sort of personal life each one of us has and what matters to each one of us in life. Technology is not everything, but for example, we can use Google Calendar, and if you can share your personal schedule as well, then everyone can understand what matters to who. My boss often says that team has to be family and family have to be team members. So that's what we think about in our daily life. In terms of the fairness, there is an office in Akase City in Hyogo Prefecture, and in that office, women in leadership reform has been ongoing. We've just made a plan and we are going to implement the plan going forward. As someone from Panasonic asked to provide information, hierarchy of matters. But I was not aware, so I sent the information to everyone all at the same time, and I was told off later on. But I think fairness is very important, so I think that we have to change the culture of our organization. Yes, as Yamamoto-san mentioned, by putting private schedule in the shared calendar, that may be a good idea, but there may be some people who do not want to share their private life. So we cannot force anything to anybody. But I think there is a tendency in some organizations that if you share your personal or private life, then that's not very good. But I think sometimes it's good to share your personal or private information, a private schedule, and if everybody understands what matters to you in your daily life, then it may be easier for you to get understanding from others. Psychological safety. I often talk about psychological safety. In Google, the performance of each team member and quality or the background of each team member, if we look at them, the psychological safety matters the most in terms of the performance. And that's about if they can have the sense of security in working in a particular team. If you ask a foolish question, if that question can be still respected, those are the most important things for achieving good performance. For example, when you have to pick up your children, it may not be possible for you to say that you are actually picking up the children, and you instead say that you have to go out to meet a customer. And that kind of situation is not good in terms of psychological safety. So psychological safety is very important. It's not about treating employees well. It's rather about to improve productivity. Psychological safety is very important to improve productivity of each member. Yes, we always want to be listened. For example, through one-on-one meeting, face-to-face meeting. As I mentioned, I told my team that I'm not going to have a dinner after 5 o'clock. And what happened after that declaration is that the male employees came to pick up their children, and some people begin to go to schools after 5 o'clock. So at the beginning, they were very surprised with my declaration, but after a while, people started to do various things after 5 o'clock. And those people who wanted to work can work after 5 o'clock. I'm not prohibiting the drinking meeting, but I don't think those drinking meetings are very productive. So rather than having drinking meetings after 5 o'clock, I wanted them to spend time more productively by attending seminars or going to schools. And I came to know that some of those staff began to pick up their children on Tuesday and Wednesday, and I didn't force anything to them. And I have a rule that I don't ask personal questions, because this is an office, so they have to be evaluated based on their job performance. However, when they have any problem on the personal side, they can always talk to me, even if I don't ask questions from my side. Even if team members have young children, I don't reduce their job burden, because they just want to work as other people, and I think that's a very important aspect. And if they cannot bear the burden, then they can come to me. Of course, trust has to be there to build such a kind of environment. In the keynote speech, Ms. Jeeb said that there is always cost if we want to respect diversity. Respecting or improving diversity doesn't mean we have to. We always have to be fair to everyone. So, do you have any comments on that aspect? Achieving result is the most important thing, regardless of the gender or nationality. You always have to achieve result. Therefore, you have to think about what sort of result you want to achieve, and you have to convince your boss, and you have to enjoy the process of achieving the result. In order for diversity to take root in the organization, it has to be connected to the evaluation system, and it has to be linked to the mission of the company itself. In your company, do you have any policy in terms of evaluation? In Google, we have OKR. Basically, that's the policy that we have in place. Objective and result. This methodology is a very common one. But what is good about this methodology is that each one of us can align our personal goals and company goals. And it may also increase the sense of belonging to a company. The other thing is, what is important is that the process to agree about the target. And if you focus on your target, there'll be less disturbance. You can declare that you would focus on certain things, and then there'll be less disturbances. So focus and results are very important. And if, for example, if you have 3 objectives, then if you are clear about those objectives, then other people can recognize your objectives and results. I used to have like 10 items or 20 items as goals, but my boss said that that's too much, and he didn't have enough time to read all of those items. So you have to focus more on less number of targets, and you have to convince or agree with your bosses that those targets matters to you and also for the company. It may be related to evaluation process. Working from home, we have working from home and program. And we started from managers. And that is not to promote work-life balance amongst the managers. Rather, it is for the employees. When those team members use flexible work hours, the question to the managers was, how are they going to evaluate their team members? We gathered the senior managers and discuss this matter of evaluation. Is this a matter of IT, or is this a matter of the institution of the company? And we try to find out how managers can understand the work, or also how we can evaluate those employees under the flexible working system.
We are already doing it for telework and office work, but people still come to office because they feel uncomfortable not coming to the office. Well, as Makia-san said before, So July 24th was a telework day, so I used this opportunity to say, let's do it with everyone. When we say that, okay, so this is the government policy, then the union members will agree and they start doing it. So we have to use the government's voice as well. So that's psychological safety that we can provide. So sometimes people feel that they have to be at work, and then that's like cultural pressure and environment. But as Jibson said, managers who have to highly evaluate the people who are producing results in shorter hours and are trying different approaches to achieve greater results. So managers have to have new skills of identifying such people and evaluating such people. So you've dealt with managers or employees, and do you have any the points that you keep in mind when you talk to the managers and encourage them? As I said before, in the US, I worked in the US for 5 years at an American bank, and I was a lawyer there. My boss would go home at 5:30 p.m. Well, there are not many trains like in Japan, so if he misses that train at 5:30, he will have to wait at the station for another 1 hour, 1.5 hours. So he would always leave before 5:30, and because he has to cook dinner for his children. So because you know that that's what's going to happen each day, so you have to schedule your work accordingly because he'll not be there. So I start working early in the morning, and then around 3 p.m. I always go to my boss and say, okay, this is what I've done, approve or not, and then give me my homework for tomorrow. It became a habit. So I started to practice the same thing. I'm going home at 5:30 or 6 at least, and then taking up new hobby like sailing and so on. That was very good work-life balance. When I was at P&G, my boss would go on a long vacation. And before I went to HR, and I was in sales team, and the salespeople will not take long vacation. So I just realized one day that my boss will come back tomorrow, but the day after is when I have to do presentation to my top management, so I have to go through with them. So I made sure after that I'm going to check my boss's schedule long in advance. Well, at our company, in many cases, our bosses are overseas, so two managers, Japanese bosses, they're often traveling in Singapore and other locations, not in Japan. Well, sometimes it's good that senior managers are not around you and you enjoy their absence, but young people in their 20s and 30s, they actually get concerned that their bosses are not around. So we are trying to create this orphan group. What it means is that we get together and the senior guys can just give information to younger people to alleviate their concerns. Well, I think I'll be repeating what others have already said. The clarifying focus and priorities, I think that's really important because business environment is changing all the time. We in our company create new services all the time. But at the corporate level, their priorities and the priorities change season by season. In my previous work, people don't communicate on things like that. They're just looking at, okay, this is sales target and a profitability target, and people are not really convinced of companies' priorities, and they don't have a consensus. Talking about priorities and focus, it's a tough job for a manager, because if you narrow down your priority and clarify your priority, then you'll be held responsible more clearly for specific tasks. So it's harder for managers to just clarify what you're going to achieve and what's your purpose and priorities. But that makes it easier for you to focus on important things, and your people will benefit from that too, because they can focus on it too. work-life balance. I mean, the bigger prioritization is work-life balance. But within work, prioritize and then make it efficient so that they will have time to enjoy the life side as well. So based on personal individual experiences, you've explained how you've approached to creating changes, and what I want to hear what you want to do too. So if you could explain, right, some private personal experiences and based on what you're going to do from now. Okay, so in terms of working from home, in our department, on a monthly basis, we make sure that everyone has to work from home at least one day a month. And that's just obligation, because if you don't do that, next generations will not do that. Then there are certain types of work with which work from home is not possible. And we have to clarify that. But if you wait for that, then all departments say, oh, it's impossible for us to work from home. It's very difficult to change the rules and the systems of the company, especially with the bigger companies. So you start from what you can do. Within your department, you start what you can do, and then try to influence to the department next to you and other sections, and that's how you expand. So that's how I feel. Work from home. When you're talking about types of work, or you cannot work from home, we have to still think about what to do with them. Well, you might say that, oh, it will require a huge IT system to do work from home, or some people have to go and see the customers, so they cannot work from home. And then those difficulties should be seen as opportunities to think more creatively, because in life, not just the child rearing and other types, you might get sick and having to look after your old parents and so on. So they are important things in life that you have to focus on. When you have enough space to move around, you prepare for difficult moments that might come in the future. So for your career, what do you want to be? What do you want to be able to do? And then if you need something, you request that support. And that's what you have to do. You have to have a strong conviction and a belief, and you have to be able to communicate that to the company. Okay, for example, like a factory, plant operators cannot work from home. I guess it's physically not easy. But in their life, when they want to have some options to work from home, they should, they should be encouraged to make a request to say, this is my life and I have to work from home and it cannot be a plant operator. Yes, we have to create an environment or culture where people can come out and say those things. If you want something, you have to ask. That's really true. You have to say it. You have to raise your voice. We often talk about diversity and inclusion. Well, the granularity is, for example, people who need nursing care. We talk about people who are having small children. But what is important for each individual is different at different life stage. Young people need certain things, and when they get older, they need some other support. So if we say that child rearing or nursing care for parents, I mean, the individual situation is different. When I lost my father, I really wanted to still work hard, so he died at a hospital. And then I was going to work and then visiting a hospital for my father. And that wasn't really a good arrangement. So when my mother got sick, I wanted to make sure that my mom could stay at home rather than having to live in hospital. So I said to the company and said, at the last 3 months of my mother's life, I want to work from home. And then that's something you have to come out and say to the company, say to your boss. And it's difficult to do. You go to your boss and say, I want to work from home. And it's difficult. It was difficult for me to say, and it was difficult for my boss to think about what to do. But unless you say it, people will not know that you have that need. So when we say diversity, it should not be superficial. Everyone has different need and living in a different environment. So you need dialogue to clarify what is needed for each individual and address it. Well, in Japan, there's culture that silence is always good. So, well, there's some cultural understanding that you're not supposed to really come out and say what you want in public, but that's not true. You have to come out and say what you need and what you want. What about you? Maybe slightly on a different note, when we talk about inclusiveness, well, manufacturing, whether in Japan and US, teamwork and consensus and those things are upheld as important values. So decision making tends to take time. When we have telephone conferences at Caterpillar, and then, well, I came out and just really came out and started to express my opinions, and then I just said my opinions, but the corporate culture was different. They just take turns for everyone to say something, so they thought I was not real Japanese because I behaved a bit differently. But depending on the industry and the business sector and the company culture, the environment is different, so you have to work on that to allow people to come out and say things. Well, again, I mean, you cannot go to people and say, you are not speaking out, you have to say, and force people to say. That's not really diversity or inclusion either. So you have to first work on the environment and the atmosphere where people freely and easily come out and say things. We have representatives and people from technology companies. What's important? Institutions important, culture is important, and then technologies to support communication. That's important too. So I'd like to ask you how you are utilizing technologies and so on. Even within the same building, same company, are you using Skype in a telephone meeting? I think you said something like that. Yeah. Yes. In front of me, yes. Hello. Yeah. It's saying that too. Yes, we have teleconference. Well, it's not just Google tools, and speak to other companies who use different communication tools. Well, as you said, yes, it doesn't have to be necessarily from home, even within the same building. Well, the meeting tends to be only half an hour in a company, so you don't have time to move around at different floors. So even within the same office, you are participating in a meeting from different floors, or you call from a business trip, and then the other person was in the UK or Singapore. So that's efficient. So you have to encourage people to use these technologies. In Google, you set your calendar, and then you set 30 minutes for the meeting, agendas in the calendar, and then as soon as everyone participates in the meeting, people add things, and then the minutes is there already documented. No one has to check or circulate, and when the meeting is finished, action items and consensus is already built and confirmed. So that's what we do in a company. Now, when we say that, okay, let's use technologies to change the way we do work, when I go to my clients, HR people and system people are not really talking to each other. And then some of the people in the same company, they're saying, hello, nice to meet you, I've never met you before, and they're from the same company. Our system people are looking at only system and security and technologies, and then HR people are only working on HR system, personnel system. But if you introduce technology, you want to increase the overall efficiency and communication, and people are starting to do that, and that's really good. Okay, so within the half an hour meeting, and then you just do all the minutes and action items, everything done in a meeting? Yes, that's what we do in a company, yeah. Well, of course, it doesn't always work out that way. Well, I have to say good things about my company on an occasion like this. But yeah, but true, it's basically half an hour. When we say, okay, we need a meeting for 1 hour, question will be asked, why do you need 1 hour? And then you really, really think. And then often you end up thinking, yeah, actually half an hour will be sufficient. Well, I send out meeting notices and then agenda, and then some people just come back to me and say, well, it's just like you are presenting your idea and you just want opinion, so we can just circulate by email. And then when people started saying that, I became more careful to make sure that when we meet, it has to be physical meeting.
We have lots of tools. The way to use it, sometimes I don't understand some of them, but there are the infrastructure out there so that we can use the tools to the fullest, because we are a global company. And one surprising experience is that the person on an assignment from the US gave me a phone call before sending an email to tell me what kind of a message he is going to send to me. And I thought this is only in Japan, but this seems not to be the case. So I think for the important matter, it's okay to use the telephones before the email. So depending on the level of importance of the agenda, it is a kind of the networking in advance. Okay. In my department, we are really the analog people. How to make a change of that? We are still a bit of struggling, but the boss or senior leaders, once a month, we invite them to a webinar, and they are asked to set up the meeting on their own. Initially, they asked why they are in the office, why do you have to use the webinar? But it is for practice, so they wore the earphones and microphones and set up the meeting. They're talking on webinar while everybody in the office, it is useless. And then the people started to move out of the office to be in the webinar, like in cafe or sometimes at home. This is not the obligation, but this is one of the ways to change their behaviors. And the insurance is a time-old industry, but there is lots of digitization, and the advanced technology is being developed for us. If we cannot get accustomed to do that, they will be left behind. So the senior managers and older people are trying very hard. You're utilizing technologies. There may be some resistance, but you encourage them to practice. Next, the topic is to make a change, make a difference. So I think everybody's comment has lots of key and an important ingredient for the difference. And what is the biggest difference you created, or what is the biggest difference you want to create? This is the next question to all of you. So I'll talk about the future. I haven't done this, so it's easy to confess where I want to go. Step 1, 2, 3, I mentioned. Step 1 is to be aware and what is important for you. And the second step, the tools to be provided by the company, working from home or webinar. Let's think about that. That is step 2. We are now working on that. And the step 3 is, as have been repeatedly mentioned, the social responsibility concept. And then what can we do in the organization for this responsibility, you may ask. There are many ways to do it, I think. For example, we are a legal department, and the law firm we will use we all hope them to be diverse. This is one way. Japanese law firms, it's difficult to pursue the diverse, as you know. There are many male partners, and they are open 24/7. But the vendor control, especially for those who are working in a big company, it's an easy thing, and because we could ask them whether they pay enough attention to the diversities, and I am communicating what we want to achieve with my team members. The millennium generation, the young people, we mention this as a purpose, the sense of life, a meaning in life. I hope that these young people to have one. And then this sink in their mind very well, and then they will be on board. Of course, every day they are very busy, but they want to have a view to something big and something useful and productive and effective for society. So this is something I would like to eventually achieve. What I want to do in the future, there are two things. It is about culture. Many people underrate what they achieve. I hope that everybody will be, I am possible, rather than it is not possible. Somebody in the Paralympics organization mentioned something like this. We have to have the can-do spirit to make a small change individually. And how to create that kind of environment. That is one thing. And Dr. Jibu mentioned about SGD. And then this is underway very actively around the world, but not much in Japan. So Caterpillar Japan would like to do that more. Making a difference, and I have been involved in women well, so for me it is to visualize the difference. In this kind of a seminar, many Japanese company representatives say that we're not doing that much, but we have more than 1,000 companies as a partner, and I see lots of companies are doing many interesting things. So the change is already happening, but it is not visible well. My pet example is Bandai, a toy manufacturer. The third child, maybe, once they have the third child, and the 1 million yen support fund will be paid for them. And then there is a condition for that fund. The partner should prepare some report admitting the effort of the employee at home, helping their family members. So the employee have to be a good father and good mother at home as well. So this is, I think, interesting. And the family should be able to acknowledge that role. And this is one of the way, an interesting way. It is not so rigid and solid and square diversity. I think many different companies have many different diverse ways of doing things, and we have to offer a way to visualize that, and then sharing those experiences is important. Google is a company to organize the information around the world to provide the people with them, so we would like to keep doing that. In terms of logistics, the persons in system department and the HR do not have communication, and the diversity, inclusion, and the HR effort have not been PR'd by the communication department. The HR and the PR department has a lot of knowledge about the product and their company's technology, but they didn't know much about the HR and diversity and inclusion, because that was not a part of the role and responsibility of the communication department. But now, under the government guidance, this seems to be changing. So with this, we can improve for the better by making a difference. I used to be a manager of diversity in a company, and sometimes my colleagues asked me what I am doing because they didn't have ideas. But we worked with the communication department of the company to participate in a seminar, and sometimes our effort was recognized with the awards. And then the employees will come to understand that, oh, our company is doing good. And then that was a big encouragement for me. Involved in diversity is a kind of a solitary work sometimes, but it is not just about HR. It is not only the top management job. The diversity should have a network, and the representative of the various divisions got together and to discuss what is the what is the thing IT can do, how can people work from home with the help of the IT. We had this kind of discussion and have a better coordination. To promote diversity requires the skill of marketing. In and outside of the company, we have to appeal what we do. The entire society, of course, change, and also there will be more people who will be willing to support in the company. We have only 20 minutes or so left, but from now, we would like to accept the questions and comments from the floor and audience. R&D of P&G, I'm Daiki. Thank you for an interesting talk. Work from home. In that case, the result and achievement, how are they measured? That is important. I think somebody mentioned that. We are in R&D, and it is a global organization, and managers are in different countries. We do not share the office. So in this remote environment, how can manager measure the achievement and the deliverables? It is very important, but how can we do that specifically? Do you have any ideas, or what kind of approach do we need to take? And Ms. Hirata mentioned that first manager does something and how could it be measured. I think you may have some experience of that. So if you have any good idea about the approach, please share that with us. That's a difficult question. I'm also struggling to do that now. But in a global company, how you appeal your task and delivery is important. Those who are not good at talk positively about yourself may be not advantaged, and many Japanese people are not good at that. And even I look at the achievement, the global leader may not be noticed that. So we try to update the status of the project at every opportunity. We have a milestone and checkpoint, and we communicate the progress at every possible opportunity, whether we are ahead of the schedule or not. And in my team, this 1 week and 2 weeks from now, what is the big three for you? The most important three things for you. What is it? We ask them. And maybe that person was busy as administrative work. That's fine, but they have to have a time to reflect on what they did in this week. We hope that every employee will have that kind of a skill and communicate that to their managers. And then I tell them that if they don't tell us, that will not be evaluated. In the telework, we don't measure the details of the actual task that has been done in one day. We have the plan the actionable, measurable, and then it is not about promote. For example, for this report, the report has to be very specific so that we can measure whether they achieved that or not. And then that is monitored quarterly and biennially, and then we do the evaluation. Whether it is work from home or not, the same measurement scale will be used. That is the ultimate goal for us. And if that's the case, in my organization, among the team, we do that on our own. And if you use calendars, and then specifically what you did, you have to take stock of that. From this time to this time, I prepared the documents, and I commute this time, and I have a meeting with our customers from this time to this time. The employee will input the specific time of these, and then we can look at them, we can take stock of them, and then we can know this part of the work could be done from home. We can make that kind of proposal. So again, visualization and taking stock of that is important to appropriately allocate the work from home or work in the office. We could have something good. It is the employees will register strongly fast, but try to do it just for 1 month, for example, at an initiation, and then you can go from there.
Is there any other question? I work for Japan Eli Lilly. My name is Saito. I'm a medical rep. Thank you very much for your presentation. I have a question. In making change, trust is very important. Trust with the employees is very important, I think. In order to build trust, what sort of measures are you taking? From the standpoint of a company, global meeting is held every Friday. And then the founder of the company joined the meeting, and he talks about what happened in that particular week and about the future plan. That's one thing. And from the technical side, this founder answers each question that's asked during that meeting. Because sometimes in companies there are many questions that managers do not want to ask. But in this meeting, anybody can ask question, and then if other people want to know the answer for the questions, they can ask the same questions, and then those questions always have to be answered. There are many uncomfortable questions, but companies always have to be responsible for answering those questions. That's one specific way to build trust between employees and the managers. At the team level or the personal level, I talked about private schedule sharing, but I don't know if sharing the private schedule is inappropriate. But when you have a very serious problem, like if your parents are very sick, companies have to have a mechanism in place to help you. You may have a lot of complaints in the company, but if the transparency is maintained and if your personal problems are cared at the team level, then I think that should be okay. If there are those things in place in the company, I think trust can be built. You have to keep trying to convince people with passion. Whenever you want to start something new, 25% of the people may support you and 50% of them are not interested and the remaining 25 are resistant. So the key is to convince that uninterested 50%. I may be the only person who believes that I'm trusted. So it's not possible to get everyone to support you. And if everyone is directing toward the same direction, that's a problem. That's also a problem. So there may be some people who want to resist. So you always have to listen to those people. And you have to be responsible for your failure, but you have to credit your employees for success. Then I think you can build trust. Thank you very much. We still have 10 minutes. We can entertain one more question, I think. Please talk to a microphone. My name is Baba from AIG. Thank you very much for your great presentations. In your company, do you have your supporters from different departments or functions? Or how do you communicate with them, with each other? And I think you have influence on the company strategies as well. Do you have any mechanism in place in your company? And what sort of challenges do you have in your company or issues that you have in your companies? Supporters. I think we have a lot of friends. Based on my own experience, when I started Women Will, it's not HR or diversity promotion department. It started from marketing department. So some people were wondering why I was doing this. I'm not representing Google as a company. In the case of Google, it was a new approach to collect information from other companies and apply that ideas in our own company. And some people questioned my approach. But what I learned from my experience is that people who are not very interested in this matter were often asked the questions of this project, like the impact or the approach of this project, and then they came to be interested. It can be a talking point when they talk to their clients, or this topic can be discussed with the company partners. So you shouldn't focus only within the company, but maybe you can involve people from outside. I think we have a lot of supporters in various divisions, but at the beginning I had a difficult time finding my supporters. For those people who are very influential, I try to communicate with them often by using objective numbers and logically. Male senior managers have to be involved. That's the key. And our company is trying to do that as well. Male executives are often appointed to be involved, and there is a women's project. And whenever they have seminars, they try to involve male executives. If there is a working mothers, I ask those male executives if they are reducing the burden of those working mothers, and I also tell them that it's not necessary for those working mothers to reduce the burden. You may have some more questions, but we are running out of time now. In order to build trust, I think you have to raise your voices whenever you need support. If you ask for support, you may feel uncomfortable if you are a leader, but nobody is perfect, so you can always ask for help. And if once you get favor from somebody, you can give favor to other people. And visualization is another important aspect. Transparency is very important. I often provide seminars on diversity at many companies. And in those seminars, I asked the participants to list up what they want to start and what they want to stop from tomorrow. And I asked them to pick up 3 things that they want to start and they want to stop. Diversity is something often invisible. So you have to visualize them, or you have to ask the question, asking them how they feel. So visualization is very important. My former manager often referred to Einstein. It's mad to ask for a different result by doing the same thing. It may say difficult to say no, but sometimes it's necessary to say no. And if your situation is perfect now, then you can continue what you are doing now. But if your condition is not perfect, you can start something new from tomorrow. I talked about the importance of visualization, and you always have to question common sense. In these kind of meetings, we often say that male executives are also obstacles. But once they experience like telework, they often like them. So you will have to have surveys and question the common sense, and then you can get a new information and start something new based on that new information. If you are working, there are many good things and bad things, and when you are happy, you may smile. And if you keep smiling, I think good things will keep coming to you. Each one of us can bring about change, and we have to be confident that we can bring about change. The role of the leaders is to provide opportunities for everyone so that everyone can be change agent. And you can be one of them who can bring about change. Thank you very much once again for joining us today. And thank you very much for coming all the way from Tokyo. And thank you for the audience as well and your contributions. Thank you very much for your patience for my poor moderatorship. Thank you.